Hello, friends. Welcome back to the School of Self-Worth. I'm your host, Nicole Song. Today, I've got a topic on tap that has been resonating deeply with all of you and with my clients, and that is how to get past your career wounds. It's going to be a spicy one, so make sure to stay tuned. We've got some really good stuff and tips ahead. And if you're an Asian American woman who wants to manifest her career pivot in 60 days, DM me pivot on Instagram. I've got a little something for you. Okay, friends, let's dive into this really fun conversation. Oh, career wounds. This is like an unspoken issue that is happening for so many of my clients, especially when they first come in to work with me, that there are things that have happened in the past in their experience in their job and their career that have just created all these little wounds over time. Sometimes there's big ones, sometimes there's little ones, and they just cannot get past them. And these wounds run the gamut. They can be a bad incident with a coworker. They can be a toxic boss that you really had so many challenges with. It can be a mistake that you made that you're still ruminating over. It can be microaggressions. There are so many different ones that happen, especially in the corporate world, that a lot of the women who come in just really feel very challenged about moving on from. So, I want to talk today, and I will be giving you a really simple hack to handle career wounds. It's something that I teach all of my clients when they first come in. It is not an easy one. It is not an easy one. I'm going to warn you in advance, but it is a very powerful tool for you to move forward so that you can actually do this. And this is one of the biggest things, the blocks that I see for so many women who are trying to pivot is that they're still so stuck on whatever this career wound is that they struggle to get any clarity or direction for their new job and what they want to move into next. And let's layer into this growing up with immigrant parents who might be the type who holds grudges for generations. Are you hearing me out there, my Asian American women? Because I know that like my family, sometimes I laugh like they have fights that go back like 20 years. And I'm not even joking about that. And so if you come from that experience and you have family members who do this, you might have just learned that you hold on to shit forever. And so there might be a little bit of that going on for you. And I believe in you. I believe in your ability to move past these things. And so I want to really get into it because it's not something that's helping you. That is the key thing to know. When we have career wounds, when we are living in an experience we've had in the past, it is essentially impossible for us to move forward clearly, to understand who we are, what we're here to do, what our purpose is on this planet. And so, my clients and I, we spend a lot of time looking at the things that are upsetting them. We look at the root cause that is creating a reaction in them and an upset in them where they really cannot manage to separate what happened before with what's happening in the present moment. And so, why does this matter? I have seen more than one client who wants to quit a job because of a career wound. You might be someone who is in that position right now. And it's just not something I typically recommend because now you're making a decision from a reaction. And whenever we're in reaction, we are not in clarity. We are not following a more grounded intuition. And these are also the decisions that over time, those are the ones you start to second guess or doubt yourself on. And now you can add them to the list of career wounds. So what happens is when we get one wound, like let's say we get a little knock in there, and then it gets deeper, right? You start to layer on other ones and then other ones and other ones. And now you have this whole pile of career wounds. And what you have to do is kind of get back to that first one so that you can start to understand and move that out. So here is the simple hack. This is the thing that's most important to remember about it is instead of spending all your time thinking about all of these things, the simple hack is for you to start loving exactly where you are in your career right now. No changes, no add ons, no deviations. Stop wishing that something did not happen to you. I see this a lot. Like a lot of people are like, I wish that hadn't happened. I wish that things were different. I wish that, this has changed the course of my life and I'm not really happy with it. Your life right now is exactly where you need to be. This can be really hard to hear because a lot of times we're like, there's all these things we still want. You're like, I want this kind of job. I want this kind of partnership relationship. I want a family, or I have my family, but I still want other things in my life. And when I see women doing that, this constant reaching and stretching, what it's doing is creating even a deeper level of dissatisfaction. And it's coming from wishing something in the past did not happen. So stop doing that part of it first. And then the second piece is to stop being hard on yourself about it. Stop regretting what has happened in the past and stop being judgmental about yourself or anybody who was involved. All of this energy is pretty negative, it's pretty charged. And when you start to get deeper into energy work and manifestation, you start to learn this really simple thing. You are always manifesting some kind of energy. Right now, at this very moment, whatever thoughts you are having is creating an energy. Your thoughts are always behind the energy that you're experiencing. And so when you go into negative thoughts, the way the law of attraction works is that now it's pulling in and drawing in more negative thoughts. So the more you do this, the more you have this downward spiral. You're focusing on the past, you're focusing on something that happened. You're now going to keep attracting in more experiences like that. So if you're ruminating about it or you're worrying about how it's going to affect your career, this is when it gets deeper and you get buried under an avalanche essentially of these thoughts. Worry in particular is the worst. It's pretty toxic. It's basically planning for a worst case scenario. So if you're worrying that something has happened to you before is going to happen again, it's essentially like calling that in. And so lots of immigrant daughters in particular also grew up with a ton of worry, especially if you had parents who were in survival mode. And I would say that anyone who's immigrated to this country has some elements of survival mode. They don't know the language, the culture. There's so much adaptation that has to happen. So worry can be pretty constant for them. And then you might layer in that they had pretty intense experiences if they were like children of war or went through a lot of trauma in their home country. There's a lot of that. So like worry is probably something that they use as a coping mechanism. But you, however, get to choose a different pathway in another way, especially when you start to understand the energy of worry. And so when you want to get out of this energy of worry and getting out of this energy of self-doubt, you have to start looking at the thoughts that you're having. When I realized that thoughts were creating my future, first, I was like, oh, that's super fascinating. And I started to pay attention to my thoughts and I was like, wow, they are pretty negative. And your brain has a very strong negativity bias. We have something like anywhere from like, I think 60,000 to 100,000 thoughts a day. And a good 80% of them are negative. They've done studies on this. And so you do the math, like that's a lot of negative thoughts every day. And then on top of it, you need 8 to 12 positive thoughts to counter the negative one. Now, before you go into despair, because I'm telling you all of these things, it's helpful for us to pay attention to it because negative thoughts are also a habit. And you can shift that habit. You can actually change how you think by changing the habit of the negative thoughts, like to work on catching yourself when you're in those negative thoughts and to start to move yourself into ones that really support you. So that's just something to know about so that you can really take your power back over what's happening in an internal place. And for me, I'm always looking at how do I shift myself out of a negative thought into a positive thought? And part of it is by focusing on the kind of thoughts I'm having. When I used to focus on career wounds, bad experiences I had with bosses, especially bosses. Bosses, I think, is one of the most challenging places for us to move out of. I used to get really stressed thinking about it, and I would like kind of flash back to those experiences. And when I started to understand that that was creating the energy that was drawing in more bosses that were really challenging for me, more experiences that I didn't love, I started to realize there was a powerful new way for me to look at this. So instead of worrying it was going to happen again, instead of stressing out over it or feeling anxiety about it, I recognized that if I chose a powerful new reality, I could shift the thoughts and experiences that I had. And then when I started to realize, I was like, oh, everything in my career has led me to this point, and that is a super important thing to acknowledge and to understand, and that I'm in the exact right time in my life for what I'm here to learn, no matter what happened before. I mean, that alone is such a powerful new reality to choose. But this is the one that has really helped me stop being the victim of my past and to create a reality that worked for me. It's one of my very favorite ones. I really actually used this the most when I was going through a divorce. And going through my divorce, it was pretty challenging to not feel regret or shame or blame for all of the things that transpired. But this particular reality really, really helped me. And it's this one: there are no mistakes, there are only lessons. There are no mistakes, there are only lessons. And what I have learned, especially from that one, is that anytime I felt like I was making a mistake in my career, in my personal life, in my life, I started to recognize that that was actually just a trigger. There was something in me that was feeling shame or challenge around that experience. And that's what made me feel like I had done something wrong or I was hard on myself. But when I started to understand that that wasn't a mistake, that there were lessons for me to learn from that experience. And I have learned huge amounts from both work, career wounds, and then also from going through a divorce. That those lessons, man, I wouldn't give up those lessons for the world. Those lessons have changed my life. They have led me down pathways to reclaiming my power, to really understanding who I am, to being more authentically myself in every single way. So every trigger, every challenge is actually a lesson in disguise. And when you can come into that reality and really start to choose that reality, that's when your life can change. And that's when you get to choose a life of transformation, of expansion, of openness. So if you can really remember that, that is the hack. There are no mistakes, only lessons. And for you to look at, what is there for me to learn from this experience that I had? What can I carry forward that is really powerful about that experience? You've just been dreaming a bad dream that you can't recover, but actually it's not true. You can totally recover. There are no mistakes. There are only lessons. So if you're seeing some big insight for yourself, I would love to hear it. DM me at Nicole Song on Instagram. Let me know what insights you're getting from this conversation. I would love to hear that. And if you want the exact step by step to pivot into a dream career that is fulfilling, that you feel passionate about, that you can't wait to go to every day, DM me pivot on Instagram at Nicole Song. And I cannot wait to hear from you because I've got something for you there. All right, friends, thank you so much for this powerful conversation, and I'll see you next week.